Your brother-in-law's startup is booming, sweetie. Don't ruin it with your surgery drama. My father said this while spreading butter on toast. My chest was burning literally. I'd just been diagnosed with a condition that required urgent surgery. But that morning, across our kitchen table, my medical future was decided, with a shrug, a smirk, and a redirected check. Hi everyone, my name is Sloan. I'm 26, and I used to think family meant protection. That illusion shattered the day my dad chose status over my life. The money my grandfather left in the family trust, money specifically reserved for emergencies, was something I'd never touched. Until I needed it. I asked humbly, even shamefully, and my dad handed it over to my sister's husband, Brian.
Why?
Brian's building something real, Dad said. You'll bounce back. Just wait a year. Except my health didn't care about timelines. The pain got worse. I was blacking out at work. But no one looked my way, not Dad, not Brian, not even my sister. I swallowed it all.
Numb.
I left the family group chat the next day. And when the pain got unbearable, I made a decision no one saw coming. I would disappear. But not forever. I packed a single bag and took the last of my savings, a measly $1,200. I didn't even leave a note. No goodbye. No confrontation. Just silence. I boarded a bus to Seattle that night, a city where no one knew my name. The clinic there had a non-profit branch for uninsured patients. I spent hours in waiting rooms, answered questions with a tight smile, and learned to fake laughter so people wouldn't see I was in constant pain. The surgery didn't happen immediately. There was a 6-month wait. So I worked under the table at a bookstore cafe, saving every penny. I slept in a women's shelter, then finally shared a tiny sublet with 3 other girls who didn't ask questions. And I kept my mouth shut. Meanwhile, my sister's Instagram was blowing up. Brian's startup had a launch party. My dad was there, smiling wide, his arm around Brian like he was the golden son. I watched it all from my cracked phone screen, heating a can of soup on a secondhand stove. They didn't even notice I was gone. Or so I thought. Because one day I got a message, not from them. It was from my grandfather's lawyer. Hi Sloan. I need to speak to you privately. Your grandfather's trust had conditions. And you were the main beneficiary. And just like that, the game flipped. I stared at the message, blinking. Beneficiary? I thought the trust was for the family, controlled by my father. That's what I'd been told my entire life. Turns out, that was only partially true. The lawyer explained everything in a hushed phone call, his tone clipped and serious. There were 2 versions of the trust, he said. The public-facing one, which your father manages, and a sealed one, privately assigned by your grandfather just before his passing. That one names you Sloan, sole beneficiary. But it comes with a clause. You must request access independently and not under family influence. I nearly dropped the phone. He continued, your grandfather knew things might get complicated. He left notes. He saw what was happening to you and to them. All the bitterness I'd been swallowing for months turned cold. I hadn't just been discarded. I'd been lied to, gaslit, and stolen from. The trust? It was worth nearly $3.2 million. And Brian had taken my medical emergency money for an app that now had 0 traction and growing debt. The funding dried up. Investors walked. I hadn't noticed, but karma had. Sloan, the lawyer said gently, would you like to claim what's yours? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened Instagram. Brian had just posted a photo captioned, life is good when you've got the right family. And that's when I made my choice. Not just to claim the money, but to claim everything they ever tried to erase. Brian's company folded quietly 2 weeks later. No announcement, no explanation, just a ripple of whispers in tech forums and a sudden halt to his social media posts. My sister, usually loud with her designer bags and entrepreneur wife captions, went radio silent. That same week, my father showed up at the lawyer's office. I wasn't there, but I got a transcript of what he said. She's confused, Dad insisted. That trust was meant for the family. She's not in a state to manage something that large. Just transfer it back under my supervision. The lawyer cut him off. Mr. Whitmore, your daughter is the sole legal beneficiary. As of this moment, all assets, properties, and holdings tied to the sealed trust are being transferred to her private control. You have no authority to speak on her behalf. My father stormed out. 2 days later, I received a text from my sister, her first message in 8 months. Hey, can we talk? I didn't reply, but I saw what triggered it. Brian's financial mess had gone public. Lawsuits, debt collectors, a tech expose naming fraudulent numbers. Then came the knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find all 3 of them, Dad, Brian, and my sister. Tired, pale, desperate. My father tried to smile. We were just in the neighborhood. I stood there calmly and said nothing. For a moment, none of us spoke. They stood there like strangers wearing familiar faces. Brian looked thinner. His shoulders, once puffed with confidence, now slumped inward. My sister clutched her purse like it was the last solid thing left in her world. And my father, he avoided my eyes completely. Can we come in? He asked quietly. That was new. My father had never asked me for anything before. He had always decided. I stepped aside without a word. They walked into my small apartment, their expensive shoes out of place on the worn wooden floor. My sister glanced around, taking in the modest furniture, the quiet life I'd built without them. You disappeared, she said, her voice trembling. We didn't know where you went. I almost laughed. Brian finally spoke. We didn't realize things would turn out like this. No. They hadn't. They never realized anything until it hurt them personally. Dad cleared his throat. We made mistakes. Mistakes. Such a gentle word for something that had nearly destroyed me. He looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. We need help, Sloan. Not how are you? Not are you okay? Just that. I walked to the window, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Because they still didn't understand. They thought this was about money, but it never was. I turned back to face them. You want help? I asked quietly. From me? Brian stepped forward. We lost everything. The house, the cars, our accounts are frozen. The lawsuit's real, Sloan. We didn't know this would happen. I tilted my head. You didn't know what would happen? That you'd gamble my surgery money and lose? My sister flinched. Dad spoke next. I understand you're angry, but you have resources now. You could make all this go away for all of us. I laughed. You mean like how you made me disappear? They were stunned into silence. I walked to the drawer and pulled out a single check. Blank. I placed it on the table. You want help? I said, my voice cold but calm. Write down the number. But first, write down everything you did to me. Every lie. Every theft. Every time you chose someone else over me. My father looked horrified. You want us to confess? No, I said. I want you to admit it. To yourselves. In writing. Then, maybe I'll consider it. Brian swallowed hard. My sister looked down. I'll give you 5 minutes. I stepped out of the room, heartbeat calm for the first time in years. When I came back, they had written everything. And that's when I picked up the check and tore it clean down the middle. My sister gasped as the pieces of the check fluttered to the floor. You said you might help, she stammered. I said I'd consider it. I replied, bending to pick up their confession instead. But this is the real payment. Brian stood up sharply. Do you know what you're doing? That confession, if it gets out, it'll destroy us. I folded the page neatly. Yes. I know exactly what I'm doing. My father's face had turned pale. Sloan, think about the family name, your grandfather's name. I looked him in the eyes. You used his name to lock me out of a trust he left for me. You stole from your own daughter. That legacy ended the moment you chose pride over blood. Brian tried one last angle. We're being sued. We could lose everything. You could save us. I raised an eyebrow. And when I needed surgery, when I could have died, what did you save me from? They had no answer. The room was quiet, thick with regret, and the collapse of their illusion of power. I'm not cruel, I said softly. I won't release this. Not today. But you'll leave here with nothing. Just like you left me. As they stepped out, broken and silent, my father turned back once, as if to speak. But I closed the door gently in his face. And for the first time, I felt whole. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from them again, not a word, not a knock, not a text. But I started receiving messages from old family friends, distant relatives, even former colleagues of Brian. Apparently, their confession somehow made its way to the right inboxes. I never leaked it directly, but I didn't stop it either. Their reputation crumbled. The lawsuits intensified. Brian's name became a warning in the business world. My sister lost her influencer deals. And my father, once the proud man holding our family together, quietly retired under pressure from the board. Me? I took a long, deep breath. Then I booked the surgery at one of the best hospitals in the country. Paid in full. No waiting list. I woke up with fresh stitches and a second chance. After recovery, I bought a little lakeside cottage, started writing, and even opened a nonprofit fund in my grandfather's name for women who'd been discarded by the people who were supposed to protect them. I never looked back. But sometimes on quiet mornings I think about that knock on my door. How they stood there, expecting the girl they broke to save them. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was someone far more dangerous.